Okay, let's dive in. Ever, ever really stop and think about what's inside your phone? Like deep inside?
Or an EV loader, maybe?
Exactly. I mean, we're talking about stuff that sounds, well, frankly, a bit sci-fi. Elements like neodymium.
Dysprosium?
Yep, the rare earth elements. Re.
Right, REs. They sound obscure, maybe, but they're the sort of hidden engine behind, well, so much modern life.
Yeah.
Your phone, green energy turbines.
Absolutely essential.
And right now, these metals are like smack bang in the middle of this huge global drama. It's getting pretty intense. We've been uh, really digging into this, going through a whole stack of sources, articles, reports, you name it, looking at this really bold strategic move India just made
A very significant move, yeah.
concerning these minerals, these vital minerals, and the ripples. Well, they could spread pretty far.
That's right. And when we say rare earths, it's not just one thing, is it? It's a group. 17 different metals. You mentioned neodymium, dysprosium.
Right.
There's yttrium, terbium.
Lutetium,
Hmm.
all those tricky names. And calling them the secret sauce is, I think, spot on. They're just indispensable. The tiny motors in your phone,
The vibration, yeah.
that's them. The big, powerful magnets in electric cars, wind turbines, even, high-tech defense systems,
Yeah.
all rely on these.
But the name, rare earth, it's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? They're not actually that rare.
Not in terms of quantity in the ground, no. The name's kind of historical. The real bottleneck, the massive challenge, is getting them out and making them usable.
Ah, the processing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Extraction and processing are incredibly difficult. Environmentally messy, too.
Yeah.
We're talking over 100 separate, really complex steps to get from raw ore to the purified stuff industry needs.
Wow. Okay, so foundational tech, nightmare to process, complex global supply. Got it. So based on everything we've looked at, our mission here in this deep dive is to unpack India's big move, halting some rare earth exports. We need to figure out, why now? What's the bigger picture globally? And crucially, what does this actually mean for supply chains, for industries like cars, electronics, the stuff, you rely on?
What it means for the end consumer, ultimately.
Precisely. So to get India's move, you first have to look at the elephant in the rare earth room.
China.
Overwhelmingly, yes, China. The sources we've seen paint a picture of just total dominance. It's staggering, really.
The numbers don't lie.
They really don't. China controls around 70% of global rare earth production, mining the stuff.
Which is a lot.
It is. But the really jaw-dropping number, the one that gives them incredible leverage, is processing, turning that raw dirt into usable metals.
And that figure is?
An estimated 90%.
90. Wow. So they don't just dig it up, they control the crucial transformation stage.
Exactly. That processing bottleneck, it's basically a chokehold. It means, like the analogy goes, when China sneezes on rare earths...
Industries everywhere else catch pneumonia, not just a cold. Potentially face shutdowns.
And we just saw that happen, didn't we? China flexing that muscle.
We did, very clearly.
Yeah.
Looking at the reports, it was April 4th, 2025. China announces export curbs on specific rare earths and, crucially, the powerful magnets made from them.
Targeting specific elements, too.
Yeah, things like terbium and lutetium were mentioned specifically. And this wasn't, some minor regulatory tweak buried in paperwork.
No, this felt different.
It was widely seen, the sources suggest, as a strategic play. Part of the escalating trade tensions, especially with the U.S. It was a signal, a very loud signal about who controls the taps.
And the impact wasn't just theoretical, was it? It hit fast and hard.
Oh, yeah. Almost immediately.
Yeah.
We saw reports, for instance, about Japan's Suzuki.
The car maker.
They apparently had to suspend production of the Swift, their popular car, on May 26th. Just stop the line.
Why? Just because of this.
The reason cited. Couldn't get the magnets they needed, magnets that rely heavily on these rare earths, mostly sourced or processed through China.
Wow. A major car plant grinding to a halt. That really brings it home.
Yeah. That's the real-world cost of that kind of dependency right there.
And it's not just Japan feeling it, right? India's own industries are sweating.
Acutely, yes. India's auto sector is facing, well, pretty much the same crisis. SIAM, the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, they've been sounding the alarm loudly.
What are they saying?
Based on their statements, industry chatter, and the sources. There's a genuine fear that vehicle production in India could just, stop, halt, by late June 2025, if these magnet supplies don't get flowing again.
Late June. That's
yeah.
now.
It's imminent. Companies like Bajaj Auto, TVS Motors, Tata Motors, they're under huge pressure. Reports say they're down to maybe 2 or 3 weeks of inventory.
That's cutting it incredibly fine.
It is. And the immediate reaction, the sort of firefighting response from India,
Let me guess, phone calls to Beijing.
pretty much. Sending a delegation to Beijing, basically pleading for faster approvals on export licenses, it just highlights how quickly that reliance becomes a massive economic vulnerability.
Okay, so global picture. China's dominance, causing real pain in Japan, in India, and this is the context for India's next move.
Exactly. The stage is set.
Which, as you said, caught some people off guard, because India isn't poor in rare earths, is it? The geological survey is like the U.S. one.
Far from it. India actually has the world's third largest reserves, estimated at, what, 6.9 million tons? That's substantial.
So they're sitting on a gold mine. Or a rare earth mine, I guess.
That's the paradox, isn't it? That's what jumps out from the sources. Huge reserves, literally under their feet, but historically. They've mined and crucially processed only a tiny fraction.
Why is that, if they have so much?
Well, like we said, the processing is tough. It's messy, environmentally costly, needs huge investment, and maybe the returns just haven't seemed attractive enough for private companies to really jump in and scale up.
So who's been doing it?
For years, it's mainly been the state-run company IRL, Indian Rare Earths Limited. And IRL have been exporting some of what they produce, notably to Japan. There's been a long-standing agreement, like 13 years, with a company called Toyotsu.
Ah, the Japan connection again.
Right. So in 2024, for example, IRL sent over 1,000 metric tons of rare earth oxides, mainly neodymium, to Japan, which was about a third of their total output that year, around 2,900 tons. A steady business, but small on the global scale.
Okay, right. And this brings us to the turning point. June 13th, 2025. Just weeks after China's move starts biting, India's auto industry is panicking.
The timing is key.
India's Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, makes this big announcement. He tells IRL publicly to suspend those exports to Japan.
Stop sending them.
Yeah, not a quiet policy shift. This felt very deliberate, a strategic message.
And the motivation seems pretty clear from everything we've read. India saw what China did in April. They saw the immediate threat to their own industries, especially, their growing EV ambitions.
They need those magnets for EVs.
Absolutely. So they realized, hang on, we have to prioritize our own needs.
Yeah.
And accelerate building their own processing capacity. The goal is clearly stated. Reduce the reliance on China.
Because China keeps using it as a weapon, basically.
Like a geopolitical sledgehammer, yeah. So halting exports, even to a friendly country like Japan, it signals this fundamental shift. India is saying, we're moving up the value chain. We want to be a serious player, not just a supplier of rawish materials. It's about control, strategic independence.
Okay, but why Japan specifically, if the relationship is good?
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive, but the sources suggest it wasn't about Japan per se. Japan's just one of the world's biggest importers, hugely reliant on China, and India was one of their few sort of backup options.
A diversification play for Japan.
Exactly. And while India's exports to Japan were important for IRL, apparently worth nearly $7 million in just Jan to April 2025.
Not insignificant.
No, but compared to China's global share, it's a drop in the ocean. So cutting off even that small flow sends the loudest possible message. India is now looking after number one, prioritizing its own growing domestic demand, especially for EVs.
And the timing. It's impossible to ignore the link to China's April ban.
Oh, absolutely no coincidence. That was the wake-up call. It just laid bare how fragile things were, relying on one dominant source.
So India sees an opening.
An opportunity. Definitely. In this global scramble to diversify away from China, we're seeing others move too. The U.S. investing reports mentioned $39 million for domestic processing. Australia, Myanmar, trying to ramp up production.
So India's basically saying, we've got the raw stuff, now we're focusing on building the factories here to use it ourselves first.
That's the core message. Serve ourselves, then maybe become a reliable alternative for others. But it's not quite that simple, is it? Some sources flag potential issues.
Like what?
Well, suspending exports to Japan might clash with that 13-year agreement they have. That could get diplomatically tricky.
Legal obligations.
Could be. And domestically, for IRL to even get more raw material, they need approvals for 4 new mines.
Right.
And getting statutory approvals in India, well, it's not always quick.
Bureaucracy. Right.
It's like you've got the grand ambition to bake this enormous cake, but first you need permits to get the flour and the industrial oven you need. It doesn't exist yet. You need to build it.
So the vision is clear. Keep the rare earths, build the processing here. But the roadmap, what does that actually look like beyond just stopping exports? Is there a bigger plan?
There is. India has this broader strategy taking shape. Action under the National Critical Mineral Mission that was launched April 2025, specifically aimed at self-reliance in these crucial resources.
Okay, so a formal government push.
And concrete steps. IRL is looking to expand mining and processing. They already have that rare earth permanent magnet plant in Visakhapatnam, making samarium cobalt magnets.
That's something.
It's a start, definitely.
Yeah.
But we need to talk scale here, because this is where the challenge really hits home. That plant's capacity, pretty small, around 3,000 kilograms a year.
3,000 kilos. Okay,
Yeah.
and China's producing how much magnet material?
Roughly 200,000 tons.
So that's 200 million kilograms.
Yeah, compared to India's 3,000 kilos.
Yeah.
Well, you used the analogy of a slingshot versus a tank earlier. It feels about right. The ambition's there, but the scale difference is just monumental right now.
Wow. Okay. What else is in the plan, though, besides scaling up that one plant?
While other pieces are moving, reports talk about the government exploring financial incentives to try and boost domestic magnet making. Maybe the Ministry of Heavy Industries steps in to cover the price difference between potentially pricier Indian magnets and the cheap Chinese imports.
Subsidies, basically.
Could be. They're also looking outwards again, not just for raw materials this time, but maybe for processed stuff or specific rare earths they still need. Talking partnerships with Mongolia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka.
Hedging their bets?
Seems like it. And then there's Kabul, that's the joint venture set up to go find and buy critical mineral assets overseas. Plus, India joining the U.S.-led Mineral Security Partnership. It's like they're trying to assemble their own network, their own...
An Avengers team for critical minerals?
Something like that, building alliances.
But the hurdles remain massive, right? You mentioned the agreement with Japan getting mine approvals.
We really can't overstate the challenges. That Japan agreement could cause headaches. Getting those 4 new mines approved could take ages. And just scaling up processing that needs huge money, advanced tech, skilled people, none of that appears overnight.
And regulations. Environmental rules.
Add complexity and cost, absolutely. Necessary, but slows things down. And there's a structural issue too. IRL Oils currently has a monopoly on mining monazite sand, a key REE source in India.
Why is that a problem?
Because private companies thinking about building processing plants look at that and get nervous. They don't have guaranteed access to the raw material at a competitive price if there's only one state-run supplier.
Ah, lack of competition for the feedstock.
Exactly. So the pantry isn't just low on some ingredients. Some key ones are locked behind these bureaucratic or structural doors.
And meanwhile, back in the real world, the Indian auto industry is still freaking out.
Very much so. It feels like watching a slow-motion car crash, almost. Siam's warnings about production stopping by late June. That feels terrifyingly close.
Especially for EVs, right? They need those neodymium magnets.
Desperately. And you hear executives like Bajaj Auto's MD, Sudarshan Venu, being really vocal, saying these shortages aren't just inconvenient. They mean production delays are coming, costs are going up for consumers. It's inevitable.
I did see one report, though, Maruti Suzuki claiming they weren't feeling the pinch yet.
Yeah, saw that too. But it's hard to square that with the data, isn't it? When 82.9% of India's total magnet imports last year came from China.
Almost 83%.
Right. Claiming immunity with that level of dependency seems optimistic. Maybe just putting a brave face on it for now.
Okay, let's zoom out again. This whole rare earth situation. It's not just about minerals, is it? It's pure geopolitics, economic strategy.
Deeply intertwined. China's dominance wasn't an accident of geology. It was deliberate. A decades-long state-supported strategy.
Going back how far?
Started really ramping up in the 90s. China invested massively in the refining and processing tech. Often, let's be honest, with looser environmental rules which helped keep costs down.
Making it cheaper than anywhere else.
Exactly. They built up huge capacity, while others, like the U.S., actually scaled back their domestic operations, partly due to those environmental concerns and costs.
And then China used that dominance.
They did. The classic example, which comes up in the sources, is 2010, the dispute with Japan over islands.
Right, the Senkaku Diaoyu incident.
China just cut off rare earth exports to Japan. Bam. Japanese imports dropped, 39% almost overnight. Global prices went through the roof.
Proving they could just turn off the tap.
Demonstrated it perfectly, whenever it suited their strategic aims.
Yeah. And knowing that history makes India's current position, their move, feel even more significant because they have the reserves. That's 6.9 million tons.
Enough. Some estimate based on current use for 450 years of India's own needs.
Wow. That's a potentially incredibly strong hand to play. If
they can overcome all those challenges we talked about. Accessing it, processing it, building the industry, that's the massive if.
So the road ahead, it's long.
It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. India is looking at everything, recycling rare earths from old electronics, EVs, investing in R&D for better processing, trying to find other raw material sources. Some reports mention Kazakhstan apparently has reserves of 15 out of the 17 REs.
Diversifying supply is key.
Absolutely. But catching up to China's scale, their cost structure, built over decades, that's a monumental long-term job. Short-term, India's key industries, cars, electronics, they're still stuck, highly reliant on getting stuff, mostly processed stuff, from China.
Despite the bold talk.
Yeah, the numbers show it. 93% of permanent magnet imports in the last fiscal year, 2024-25, still came from China. You hear the optimism from Commerce Minister Goyal calling China's curbs a wake-up call, seeing India as a winner long-term.
Which could happen.
It could,
Yeah.
but the current import figures, they show just how deep the short-term dependency runs. It's a long haul.
So, okay, bringing it back to the listener, why should you care about this whole rare earth soap opera?
Because it's not abstract.
Right, if you've got a smartphone. If you drive a car, any car, but especially an EV, if you care about wind power, green energy, rare earths are in there, they make it work.
They're fundamental.
So if India pulls this off, builds its own strong, independent supply chain, that could mean more stable prices for things like EVs down the line, less vulnerability to geopolitical games.
Maybe more reliable supply globally.
Could even mean more manufacturing jobs in India, maybe more made-in-India tech eventually.
Yeah.
What if they don't pull it off? If the challenges are too big?
Then we likely stay reliant on China's dominance, which could mean continued price swings, supply chain headaches, delays for gadgets, for cars, affecting everyone, wherever you are.
It really is a high-stakes gamble we're watching.
It is. You've got a major nation sitting on significant resources, trying to fundamentally change its place in a critical global market dominated by another superpower.
Will it work?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
India's success could genuinely start to reshape these crucial supply chains, especially for EVs and renewables. They have the raw materials, they have the ambition now. But the hurdles, technical, environmental, financial, bureaucratic, diplomatic, they are immense.
So summing up, India's making this bold play, conserve rare earths, build domestic muscle, precisely because China's grip has shown everyone how vulnerable they are.
Exactly. India has the resource wealth, the ambition is now clear, the first bits of a plan are visible, but can they overcome the sheer scale of the challenge, the technology gap, the investment needed, the regulations, those international agreements like with Japan? It's a massive undertaking.
Leaves you with a big question mark.
It does. The provocative thought is really, will this calculated risk pay off? Will India break free and become a major, reliable alternative in the rare earth game? Or will the obstacles prove too high, leaving them still largely dependent on China for these vital materials for, maybe the next decade or more?
And what's the next critical mineral that becomes a flashpoint? Lithium, cobalt.
Good question. It probably won't be the last time we see this dynamic play out.
Something to think about, definitely. Next time you pick up your phone, see an EV drive past, remember that global tug of war. It's happening kind of right inside the tech you use every day.